Welcome to another High Performance Disciple live stream coaching session. If you're part of the membership, then welcome. You're part of the team, and I'm looking forward to helping you connect what I talk about in this session to the content that you have access to. The key is immersion. So I want to help you move from just getting information to immersing yourself into the transformative principles that we have to share. If you're a guest, then I really hope that our session together is going to give you some tips, some tools that you can immediately put into place and to coach yourself and to help you make progress on the subject matter that we're going to look at. And maybe hopefully you're going to identify the fact that the High Performance Disciple membership program might just be what you're looking for right now to help you make personal and professional progress in your development, to help you unlock the power of your spiritual formation and your professional progress. So I want to thank those that have been sending in questions to us. We want to make sure that we answer as many during our live stream coaching sessions. And so we're going to take another 2 questions tonight. And the first is a big one. And so we're going to give the majority of the time over to that question. Have you ever struggled with distraction? Can I see a show of hands? Come on, stick those emojis if you're watching this on the live stream right now. Then be honest with me, yeah? Are you a person that is easily distracted? Well, let me give you the question. We've actually had this question a couple of times. People saying I need to talk about focus, which of course is the opposite to distraction. But the question that I had sent to me was this. I need help with time management, prioritizing so many tasks which all seem important, and then having laser-like focus to carry out the task. You know, this subject is huge. And I guess we can break this down into several different segments, that question. But I'm going to go for the jugular in this session. And we may take some of the other elements in future coaching sessions. You see, distraction is ultimately the root issue. Distraction is the root issue. So I want us to diagnose, first of all, what is distraction. And then we're going to focus on the remedy, which is vision. Okay, so distraction. What is distraction? It's the root problem. And then vision, which is the solution. So let's look at 5 things that distraction is. Okay, 5 descriptions or 5 realities of distraction. The first is this, that distraction has terrorized mankind since the beginning of time. Now, this is High Performance Disciple. So what we do in our sessions is, I'm a Christian, I'm a follower of Christ, and the Bible is what shapes my worldview. What's a worldview, Gareth? Worldview is the lens through which you interpret everything that goes on. Everyone has a worldview. May not be the same as mine, but you will have a worldview. And I really believe that the starting point of high performance, the starting point of being an effective leader is to become aware of the lens through which you're interpreting everything that happens in your day-to-day lives. So many people are unaware of that lens. They're unaware of the spectacles that they're wearing. And so they wonder why other people don't see things the way that they see them. And that level of self-awareness is absolutely critical. We've got to become aware of what is shaping our reality, so that either we can strengthen that if we're happy with that worldview, or we can take those glasses off and put some different glasses on, because ultimately that is going to be a key limiting factor as to whether we make progress or not. So the biblical worldview is the lens through which I'm looking. So whether you have that worldview or not, I want to encourage you, there's going to be lots of keys that I'll give you that help you make progress. I talk about High Performance Disciple can give you a code of success, because the Bible has a code of success. For instance, I've had reflected back to me on several occasions, you know, what Jesus says, which is treat others as you would want to be treated. So people of faith and no faith take those keys and use them as a code for success. But there are those who have a relationship with God. And that's what I call a covenant of significance. In other words, it's a relationship that unlocks a bigger vision for our lives that actually creates a significant impact on the world in which we live. And I believe you're capable of that. So whichever angle you're coming at from, whether it's for a code of success or a covenant of significance, you're very welcome. But I want to kind of make that distinction so that you're aware that during this time that I share with you, I'm going to be using my biblical worldview lens. So that's a long-winded way of introducing the first point. Distraction has terrorized mankind since the beginning of time. So back in the Garden of Eden, Genesis chapter 1, the beginning of the Bible, of course, God set mankind up to win. He created an environment for mankind to rule and reign over. In other words, mankind has been created to dominate its environment. Man and woman were created to rule and have control over the garden where they were put, for the intent and purpose of bringing increase to that garden. That's a really important point, because if we're wired to be in control, and that's not being in control of other people or controlling one another, it's controlling our environment. So when we go into a state of not being in control of our lives, our environment, then actually immediately we become dysfunctional. It works against the way that we're wired. So distraction has terrorized mankind since the beginning of time, because at the beginning of time, we were not created to be out of control. We were created to be in control. And distraction, the hallmark of distraction, is to be out of control. We're being pulled out of alignment with a mission, a vision that we have to produce increase. And so we are not wired for that. We are wired to be in control, to dominate our environment, not to be dominated by it. But the reason why we've been terrorized by distraction since the beginning of time is because, of course, mankind was tempted in the Garden of Eden to take from the tree from which God had said, you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It was a test by which God would know that man has put his trust in him. And so it wasn't a test to trip mankind up, but it was a test to establish trust and relationship. Ultimately, every relationship has to have the ability for both parties to opt out for it to be a relationship, because otherwise you can't opt in. So God wasn't trying to trip mankind up. It was a clear intent that man was given free will to opt in and out of this relationship. And of course, Satan, the enemy, came along and tempted mankind, used distraction to twist the words of God to ultimately pull mankind off course. And that's what distraction does. Distraction pulls us off course. And ever since the beginning of time, it has been a tactic of the enemy to rob mankind of what he and she is truly capable of. Now, again, whether you believe in a devil or not, whether you believe in an enemy or not, we all know that there is a side of us that works against us. We all know that we've got this internal battle between the part of us that desires progress and the part of us which seems to kind of be destructive and to work against what we truly desire. So however you picture that and whatever you attribute that to, that's the reality that we all have. So it's an age-old problem. Number two, distraction is a slow leak. Distraction is a slow leak. What do you mean, Gareth? Well, you know, have you ever had a slow leak? We've had a slow leak. You've had something that's occurred over time in the house. And at the start, it looks like something that seems insignificant. It's one drop. But you and I know that if that drop is left over time, it compounds to become a bigger problem. And distraction can look like that habit that is not really doing a great deal of harm, but it compounds over time. That's why on the email I sent out this morning, I believe it was, that distraction is the silent killer of dreams. Because dreams ultimately come about, not suddenly, but dreams come about through compounded, consistent, hope-filled, faith-filled action. But distraction is consistent neglect of faithful actions, which ultimately then deny us entrance into what we dream for. You know, everyone wants the overnight success, but unfortunately, overnight success, it does not exist. Overnight success is simply a sudden result of a long-term process. Most people just see the result, but they don't see the journey that's led to that result. So distraction is a slow leak. So right now, if we get serious with this subject, we can stop that leak. We can stop that doing irreparable damage to your future. Okay? So let's see it for what it is. It is not just some kind of annoying little habit. It is having a detrimental impact upon the future that you're capable of delivering. Number 3, distraction can be rooted in anxiety. Distraction can be rooted in anxiety. Have you ever been anxious about something and to the point where, you know, you kind of don't know what to do with yourself, and so you welcome distraction because it enables you to avoid the problem? So distraction is a symptom of something that I'm trying to avoid. So a question for you right now is, if you're suffering with distraction, what are you trying to avoid? What are you trying to avoid? Maybe you're not aware that you're trying to avoid something because it's happening subconsciously, but what are you trying to avoid? Distraction is an agitated mind. This is actually one of the definitions for distraction in the dictionary, which I thought was really interesting. Distraction is an agitated mind. Actually, when we're distracted, it's welcoming a level of stress into our body, both physiologically and mentally, that is going to do us harm if we don't deal with it. Ultimately, I believe that the state that God would have us operate in is to have a sound and peaceful mind. In fact, it's Paul to Timothy in the Bible, where Paul says, God's not given you a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and of a sound mind. The spirit of fear, distraction, is rooted in fear. It's rooted in agitation. And so that's not the atmosphere that God has created you for. You know, Eden was an atmosphere that Adam and Eve were created in. An atmosphere to produce increase. You are created to produce increase. Your vision should be one of increase, of producing a future far bigger than where you are right now. But you need an atmosphere for that to begin to happen. You need the right environment for the seed of your future. You need the right soil for the seed to grow. And so when we have the spirit of fear, then it is an environment that prevents the future growing. We need love, power, and a sound mind. We need that to be the atmosphere that we operate in. So distraction number 5 can be underlying hopelessness. Distraction can be underlying hopelessness. Again, sometimes we allow distraction because it becomes like an anesthetic to us facing up to a reality that we don't think we have a future. And of course, this can be as simple as, you know, a habit that, you know, binge watching, binge eating, and all those kinds of things that appear to be just, you know, things that maybe we even laugh about with other people. But of course, it can go down to as serious as, you know, addictions that have a serious impact upon our physical and mental health. But ultimately, it's an underlying hopelessness. And that's a great point to end with on the 5 definitions or reasons we can get distracted. Because if distraction is an underlying hopelessness, then how do we remedy that? Well, we need to have an underlying hope. And that underlying hope is created by vision. Vision is the antidote to distraction. We were at IKEA the other day, both Ruben and I, and we laughed because we took what we were buying to the till. And by the till, there were lots of soft toys that had been just dumped there by parents. And we laughed because we know exactly why they were there. That wasn't where they were supposed to be. They had been carried through the shop by children who clearly had pestered their parents to pick up those toys, to buy them, and then parents had used distraction to get their eyes off the toy, and last minute they took it off them and left it by the till and quickly hurried through so they didn't have to buy another toy for the child. When the child sees the toy, it knows exactly what it wants. Have you ever seen a child pull an adult towards the sweets or the candy in the shop? You see, that's what vision does. Vision pulls you forward. Vision is like a child pulling you towards the sweets. In fact, the proverb says, let your eyes look directly forward and your gaze be straight before you. You see, that's what vision is. Vision pulls us forward because our eyes and our gaze are so locked into that picture of the future. It pulls us forward. It makes the path straight. It simplifies. That's what vision does. It simplifies our life. Well, here's where I'm going to just show you a clip from one of the sessions in the Winning Life, which is a Christian track as part of the membership program. And I want you to listen to this small segment that talks about how vision unlocks self-discipline. And then we'll be right back. Number 3 is this: vision unlocks self-discipline. Vision unlocks self-discipline. Now put your hand up right now if you, watching this, would love a little bit more self-discipline. Both my hands, both my feet, if you can see my feet right now, are raised. I mean, we could look, and we do in our circles, at the evaluation wheels, the personal and professional. And guaranteed, in the next time you do that, you'll see an area, you'll think, oh man, I know I should have done that, or I know that I should have put more energy or effort in, and there's that battle inside of you between what you know you should have done and what you did do. And you just think, I just need more self-discipline. I mean, imagine going next time to the supermarket and down the one of the aisles, you know, there's tins of self-discipline that you could buy. I mean, imagine right now your trolley. Your trolley would be like, in fact, I'd be like, Leanne, go get another trolley, because like, let's just fill up on this, yeah? We just need more self-discipline. Well, let me let you into a little secret. You don't need to go and get it from a supermarket. Discipline is readily available. How is it readily available, Gareth? Because vision unlocks the discipline that you already have. Again, it's going back to the same verse, Proverbs 29, about without vision people cast off restraint. Think about it for a moment. In other words, if without vision people cast off restraint, and restraint is self-discipline, then let's flip that on its head. The way I get more restraint is to increase vision. The more vision I have, in other words, the clearer the picture of a future that I desire, the clearer I get that, the more it unlocks the restraint, the discipline to do what I need to do today to unlock the tomorrow. That's why it's so important. That's why we are called in this kingdom to be people of faith and not sight. We're called to live by faith and not by sight. Why? Because we will struggle to live by sight in the kingdom of God. Because that is not the language of the kingdom of God. And so vision unlocks self-discipline. It helps us to gain control of our lives, to have dominion. Faith unlocks and releases heaven's control over that which we can see. Vision creates a simple life because it helps us to make quicker, higher quality decisions on what we should and shouldn't do. Where there's indecision, there's usually a lack of self-discipline, and where there's a lack of self-discipline, there's a lack of vision. Vision controls my choices. It defines my to-do list. I love the fact that vision simplifies our lives. The problem is sometimes we have too many choices. We're in the information age. We have so much being thrown at us that we don't have enough of a filter in place. But vision creates that filter for us to push aside anything that is irrelevant and to simplify our choices and our decisions. Whether it's as simple a decision as what I wear each day. I remember, is it Steve Jobs, founder of Apple? He was so driven by the vision of what he wanted to create that even when it came down to what he wore, he pretty much wore the same shirt and jeans each day. He was not interested in trying to capture the attention of people as to what he was wearing. He was locked into his vision, and it simplified his daily choice of what he was going to wear. Vision simplifies everything. It tells us what we're going to read. It tells us how we're going to spend our time, because the future that we're trying to reach is demanding simple and effective choices today. I want to encourage you to watch the whole of that session 3 of The Winning Life. And again, with each of those sessions, there are 10 keys. And I really encourage people to identify the one key that really challenged them or got them thinking the most. And again, as a Christian, we can be praying and meditating upon that principle or that verse that I use in that section. There are certain sections in the program that are not overtly Christian. But again, we can do exactly the same thing. We can really meditate upon the key truth that is challenging us or getting us to think. And then I encourage us to really set a goal based upon that point. Ultimately, if we don't action the principle, then it doesn't become experience. And experience is where the miracle happens. When we experience something, it becomes a conviction, not just an idea. So I want to move on now to 5 questions to empower us to beat distraction and to get the essential things done. How can we start to unlock a fresh level of clarity around our vision? So question number 1, and this question comes courtesy of a book that I love, which is written by Gary Keller, and it's called The One Thing. And it's a great title for a book because it is about focus. And Gary Keller asks the focusing question that he calls it. So my first point is this: what is the one thing that I can do? So the question that Gary Keller encourages people to ask is, what's the one thing I can do, such as by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? What's the one thing I can do, such as by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? Now, I love that question because I've used it so many times in those moments when I maybe have too many options. I've got a number of different avenues that I could take, and I just stop and I ask myself, right now, get clarity of vision, Gareth. What's the one thing that I can do, such as by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? But what I love about that point is, again, it's rooted in the Bible. It was Jesus who encountered Mary and Martha, and in Luke chapter 10, it says this: as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted with much serving. And she went up to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. Can you just put in the chat column right now? One thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. Wow, this is powerful because everything that we've just been talking about distraction, Jesus has identified already. Notice, Martha was doing lots of good things. But good things can be a distraction from the great thing. And that's what Gary Keller is trying to do. He's trying to get us to focus on one thing, because the propensity we have as human beings is to get involved in many good things. And as Jim Collins talks about, good is the enemy of the great. If our vision is greatness, then good in the present is not good enough. But again, notice Jesus says that Martha was actually distracted. Her good things were a distraction. Her serving was dressed up distraction. Wow. What am I doing now that I would class as serving? Again, this isn't just a Christian term. We talk about service in business. We talk about service in sales. We talk about service in community. So is our service right now a distraction from what we should be doing? Now, of course, ultimately, we're called to serve mankind. Like that's the whole purpose. But the wrong serving is not service to mankind. In fact, the wrong serving can sometimes be self-service to keep us away from doing what we should be doing. And notice Jesus said, Martha, 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 you are anxious and troubled about many things. In other words, anxiety was the root of her distraction. Anxiety was the root of her distraction. A distraction was filling a gap that she was trying to avoid. But Mary had chosen one thing. And Jesus said that one thing and the good that she's doing through that one thing will not be taken from her. Which, in other words, if we focus on the one thing that we should be doing, it is not just about success in that one moment. It has a long-term impact. Jesus said it will not be taken away from her. Now, of course, in this situation, Jesus is talking about Mary centering herself on Jesus, who ultimately was the teacher, who was the savior, who was there to teach and to transform the way that they saw themselves and the world at which they lived. And of course, that would have an eternal effect on how they saw things. But I really want to encourage you right now to expose that distraction and expose it by asking that one thing question. What's the one thing I can do? Such as by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary. Again, here's a great question, kind of a follow-up question to that, which is, what have I done in the last 12 months that wasn't necessary? What have I done in the last 12 months that really wasn't necessary? It's so important to stop and evaluate. The quicker we can evaluate, the quicker we can make changes and adaptations so that we don't waste time and we can expose distractions. The problem is distraction doesn't always feel like distraction in the moment. We can only see it sometimes upon reflecting and looking back. So if we can reflect and look back often, then we're able to identify the unnecessary, to strip that away in our diaries and in our plans so that we can stay focused. So the second question is this: if I wouldn't start it today, why am I doing it now? Now, this question was inspired by Greg McKeown, who wrote a book on essentialism. Okay, again, another word that you can use to really talk about focusing on what is really important, the most important. And he talks about the fact that when we go to sort out our wardrobe, you know, when we have that moment where we're trying to get rid of stuff, but we're struggling to say, yep, take that to the charity shop or give that away to somebody or sell it or whatever. You know, we often tell ourselves, oh, I might need that one day. And we struggle to let go. But he says this, he says, what we need to do is we need to ask ourselves over each item, if I were to walk into a shop today, would I pay the same amount of money for that item if I was buying it now? And if the answer is no, you get rid of it. Now that is cutthroat, but that is absolutely true and correct, because the amount of times I've said, oh, I might wear it one day. Have I worn it? No. The problem is we broaden our focus far too easily. And so now this has had a real impact on us. And let me share with you a quick story of something that's just happened recently in the organization that me and my wife lead. My wife, Leanne, we lead an organization, a church called Everyday Champions. And so obviously COVID's been a huge period of transition for the world. But for us as an organization, for us as a church, it's been a defining period of reset. And one of those areas that was part of our organization was a business. That business has historically, over the last decade, helped to sustain us as a charity and to give us opportunity to impact and influence our community, especially the business community. It's a good business. It has been hit by COVID. It is not as profitable as it was before COVID, but it's still profitable. But we came to realize that actually it's a good thing. But when we look at it compared to where we need to go in our vision, it is a distraction. And we had to ask that question. If we were starting all over again today, would we start this business? And our answer was no. So we made the decision. It has to go. What wouldn't you start today? What wouldn't you take on today? What would you do? What would you do differently today? And therefore, why are you still doing what you really don't see yourself doing anymore? Again, this might not be something that you can action immediately, but you can ask yourself, how can I start to make a plan to transition out of something and into something else? Again, I'm just here to be a catalyst, but to help you realize that vision is key. Because actually, if we didn't have vision for the future, then we'd still keep on doing the business that we were talking about. We had a real conviction that in January, we wanted to start to behave and set ourselves up in seed form as we will be 5 years from now. And so the 5-year picture started to drive our now. Now, in a moment, I'm going to show you a clip from another product that's in our High Performance Disciple membership that helps you to start to build that future picture. Okay, so stay tuned. We'll be there in a moment. But the third thing is this. What is it that, and this is another question, okay? What is the course of action I need to focus on until I'm successful? Again, I guess it's another twist of the first question, but it's based upon FOCUS, focus, which is an acrostic for, I didn't come up with it, I don't know what the source is now, but I saw it somewhere and I thought, that's brilliant. I've never seen it that way before. Focus. You can say focus on one course until successful. FOCUS. Focus. Focus on one course until successful. What's the one course of action that if you focus on that one course of action, you would be convinced that actually whilst this course might not be the destination, but it will certainly create the movement towards the destination. And that's really important. The goal isn't to get it right. That's been my challenge as a perfectionist. I don't want to start until I know it's the right course. But the problem is, how do I know it's the right course? And we know as Christians that Ephesians 3:20, God is able to do immeasurably more than all we could ask, think, or imagine according to his Spirit that is at work within us. So immediately, God is already thinking at a whole different level. But what he's looking for is faith. It's faith that pleases God. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. And what faith looks like is creating movement that is hope-filled, faith-filled, and he can steer a moving car. He will not steer a stationary car. Jesus left areas where there was no faith, no movement, okay? So create movement. But what one course right now can you focus on to create that movement? Number 4, and this is it sounds like a ridiculous question, but actually sometimes we don't stop and ask ourselves this question and challenge ourselves to be truly honest with ourselves. Am I excited by my own vision? I told you, it's a simple and yet challenging question. Am I excited by my own vision? You see, let me put it this way. If somebody were to write down your vision and hand it to you and you read it for the first time, would your heart start to beat double time? Because it was tapping into something that was truly in you. You see, sometimes we've adopted good ideas as our vision rather than ideas that are truly a conviction of our heart. You see, and again, this is the title of that session 3 in The Winning Life, that vision is creative dissatisfaction. Ultimately, our vision has got to be linked to something that we are so passionate about that we will not tolerate a different outcome in the future. In fact, it's based upon something that we do not want to happen. It's got to really get a hold of us on the inside. So, and that's the level of excitement. Probably excitement is probably not even the right word. Does it move us? Does it compel us? It's got to really have that pull on us, because in those moments when distraction comes, and that's what we're talking about here, how do we beat distraction? It's got to cause us to absolutely reject that distraction. Okay? So am I excited? Am I moved by my own vision? If the answer is no, if my answer is, well, I like my vision, well, you are not on the right track. We've got to create that vision afresh and start again. So again, be honest. The problem is, Gareth, I've been running with that for so long now. I feel like I've got to say that's my vision. No, you don't. That's sunken cost syndrome. Well, I've put so much into it now, I better keep putting in. Well, yeah, if you want to look back with regret. Number 5, what firewall can I put in my diary to protect time to create progress? What firewall can I put in my diary to protect time to make progress? What do you mean firewall, Gareth? Well, I talk about this in The Winning Conversation. I talk about firewall focus. In other words, every building has firewalls. It has to. In the UK, we have building regulations. And firewalls are there to prevent the spread of fire so that people can evacuate a building. The thing that people talk about when they don't have boundaries in their diaries is they talk about firefighting. I'm always trying to put out fires. Anybody being a good firefighter or anybody being overwhelmed by firefighting? Yeah, we've all been there. Why? Because we've not put boundaries in our calendar to protect essential activities. So a great question to beat distraction is, what firewalls can I put in place? What protection can I put? What time and space can I protect so that I can make progress? Now, you can't put a firewall over every hour of every day. It's important that actually there is margin where the unplanned can happen. Let's face it, lots of the biggest decisions in our lives have come from unplanned activity. You know, when I met Leanne, I hadn't planned on meeting her. Okay, she wasn't part of my firewall focus. Yeah, but that's when you will meet me. No, we need to have margin. That's important. Okay, it's part of creativity. But we need to protect time for essential activity. And again, that means protected time from distractions, time when we don't access our phones, time when we keep ourselves away from people who will distract us, time when we put ourselves in an environment where there is nothing around us that's going to pull our attention. Again, you know what you're like. Set yourself up to succeed by protecting time, okay? So again, I'm just going to play in a moment one more clip that's going to just help us with this whole idea of building a clear vision for our future. But before I do that, let me just remind you right now, and again, I guess I'm speaking a little bit more now to those who are running teams and organizations, because it's so easy for us to allow things in that are going to pull us off course or are going to slow us down. And I've already talked about the things that we've been talking about as an organization. And me and Leanne, as we move into a new season for us in the business that we run as well, this is such a key time to be looking at this subject, because every day that goes by since I last clarified my vision, I am going to be subject to these two things taking place. Number one, mission creep. What's mission creep, Gareth? Mission creep is the gradual broadening of our original objectives. In other words, as time moves on, things change and we adapt and change, which we need to, but in those changes, we often allow things to be added. And that adding to our organization, our business, our team can cause us to lose sight or to lose the strength of the original objectives. I mean, COVID itself has been a time which has accelerated technological change. And so a lot of organizations have had to adapt and change. But in that adaptation, have we broadened our original objectives? And so we've kind of lost sight of that laser focused vision and focus that we need to have. Again, it's not saying that we shouldn't embrace change, but we need to allow change to be filtered through the vision rather than the change to lead our vision. So mission creep can take place, but also what can happen as time moves on from the last time we clarified our vision, we can get mission drift. Mission drift is when the organization gets in the way of its original objectives. Mission drift. The organization, the how-to. When the how-to starts to dominate why we started to do something in the first place, then we lose energy. It's the why that generates energy, not the how. Okay? The how facilitates the why being outworked. But when the how gets more time than the why, we get mission drift. Or maybe, and again, this goes through to our personal lives. Let me just talk about marriage. You know, why did you come together in the first place? I can guarantee the number one reason was not to have children. Now, having children is a key opportunity for anybody that, you know, obviously, if we can have children, is a key opportunity for a couple. But first and foremost, that's not the original purpose. And me and Leanne, right now, we have our 3 kids, and our youngest is 15. And in the next couple of years, please, Leanne, shut your ears right now because she doesn't like to think about this. I'm not sure if it's because she doesn't want to think about being back just with me alone. I don't think that's the case. But it's the kids moving on and out of the house and moving into the next phase of their lives. Of course, that was always going to happen. And so we have to have a vision for our lives that is wider than just our kids. Otherwise, the moment that they move out, we have no vision that is leading us. We have drifted from our original mission of why we came together. Okay? So anyway, mission creep and mission drift are waiting to try and get in, and they will try and get in over time if we don't generate fresh vision today. Okay? Well, listen, let's watch this quick clip, and then we'll be back to answer our final question for this evening's session. So the challenge then is 3 years. 3 years from now. What do you want to be doing? What do you want to have achieved? How do you want to describe life 3 years from now? Again, working backwards, if my dream is, as is my dream, to raise up, 1 million coaches who can positively impact society and industry by helping people become the best that they can become. Like, if that's a dream, and that's a big goal, then I've got to ask myself the question, well, 3 years from now, what do I want that number to be? And so I start kind of bringing it closer into focus. So 3 years from now, you may want to put a number on kind of how are you going to measure where you want to be at. Okay, it may be a numerical number, it may be an income number, it may be an outcome, it may be something that you've built, it may be a business that is fully established, which right now is just in infancy. Again, you get the idea, but you're describing something in its state in 3 years' time. Okay? Now, where do we go next? Now, most people would go to a year from now. And there's nothing wrong with, at any point, kind of breaking it down even more, saying, well, 2 years from now, 1 year from now. But most people would go a year from now. But the authors of the 12-week year, again, another good book that you can go and read, and certainly encouraged me and inspired me, is that sometimes a year is too far off.
when we plan for a year, they talk about in the book that actually we almost then end up putting off things now because, well, I've got a year to do it. And so what ends up happening, and it happens in financial years, in businesses, it happens when people have got budgets, you know, if things aren't spent, all of a sudden in the last couple of months, there's a frenzy to spend the budget, or there's a frenzy to achieve annual targets in 2 months because we've almost given ourselves too much time and it's not enough of a focus period. So they talk about 12 weeks being a great kind of focus point. So I'm going to talk about 3 months. So 3 years' time, where do you want to be? Where do you need to be to stay on track with your dream and who you're ultimately becoming? So 3 months' time, if you could focus on 3 goals, okay? 3 goals. Then what would those goals be?
There's so much more as part of that session, and the Close the Gap product, which you can buy on its own, by the way. You can head over to garethmorgan.tv. The link is in the information below. You can go and just buy that product on its own. But the great thing is that that product, as well as the Winning Momentum, the Winning Life, the Winning Leader, they are all part of the High Performance Disciple membership. So you can subscribe to the High Performance Disciple membership from as little as $24.95 a month and have access to all of those products, which if you were to buy them all individually would be hundreds of pounds. So it's a real opportunity to get some of this key information that I know will help you make progress, because they are the very things that I am using to make progress. And so the Close Gap session, and that session in particular, Close the Planning Gap, which so many people have a vision, but then they don't have a plan. And a plan is a key to defeating distraction, okay? Because a plan eradicates worry and eradicates anxiety. And that's why we get distracted, as we've discovered. So I really want to encourage you. There's a document as well that you can download, a PDF document. And when I unpack a little bit more about where we're going with High Performance Disciple membership, we're going to talk about how we're going to incorporate the using of that plan in with some different environments that we're going to create as part of some of the steps that we're going to build on top of the membership that you can potentially access in the future. Because I know that we need community and we need accountability to truly bring this to fruition. So I feel a real responsibility to help to provide that. And so I'll talk more about that. But you can get a head start in that. Get into that session and start to build clarity around that vision, and then a plan, an executable, actionable plan. Well, the final question that we've got is this: what non-negotiable habits have you found that keep you growing as a coach of other people? What non-negotiable habits have you found that keep you growing as a coach of other people? A great question. And to be honest, there's lots of answers I could give to that. But I've got to be honest, I distilled these down in my book in section 10 of the Winning Conversation. And I actually mentioned this in the previous live stream coaching session, but to be honest, I could mention these every single day of my life and it wouldn't be enough, because for me, these gears are the non-negotiable habits. So I'm going to quickly remind you of what they are. If you'd like to go and do a little bit more of a deep dive, you can go into the Winning Conversation section 10. If you want kind of the biblical framework for this, you can go into section 10 of the Winning Keys, which of course is the source book of where those principles are in the Bible from the Winning Conversation. But here they are. I'm going to show you them right now on my screen. So this is the Winning Conversation and the Winning Gears. So we talk about 6 gears, and I didn't mention this last time. I realized when I watched back the session that we did, I didn't actually mention the reverse gear. And actually that's because I don't mention this in the book. It's something that I have learned since writing the book. Like I said, nothing is ever perfect. When I wrote the book, it was my best attempt at the time. There are things now that I would put back in there. Maybe I'll do a second edition, but One of the things is that when you pull your car out of a drive, you reverse, yeah? Let's just say you reverse out of the drive, because I reverse into my drive so I can drive straight out. But my wife drives in, so she will reverse out. So you reverse out of your drive before you go into first gear. And to generate a clear picture of your future and to build momentum, we often need to look back. We need to reverse and look back for clues as to what is in our future. There are things that have happened in our lives that are pieces of a jigsaw that build up to create clarity for our future. Of course, as Christians, we know in the Bible, God often speaks to the children of Israel and says, remember when. And that those key words, remember when, is not a looking back in regret. It's actually being inspired by how God has provided in the past and what he's done, that will inspire them to have faith in the now and for the future. And so to build momentum, actually reversing and looking back is a great starting point. In fact, a really important starting point. And then we go on to the next gear, which is to immerse ourselves. And again, that's why we started the High Performance Disciple membership. So I could have a place where I put all of the programs that I have created for this kind of audience, and to put it so that you can access it and literally have something to watch every day if you like, and to immerse yourself in content that you know is going to help you to become a high performance leader in your personal and professional life. And so immersing ourselves in principles is key. Now, again, the question here is, what is the non-negotiable habits, or what are the non-negotiable habits that you have found that keep you growing as a coach of other people? The amount of times that when coaching people, something has just come back to mind that inspires a question that I could ask, because I have marinated myself in life-giving principles. It is essential. It is so important that I do that. And so that is, for me, a non-negotiable habit, because ultimately it's about who I'm becoming as a coach. That is absolutely key. So that, I would say, is non-negotiable habit number one. Non-negotiable habit number two is create the plan. We've talked about that just now, so I'm not going to go into that a lot. But again, we have to have a plan, and it needs to be written down. There's no good just saying, yeah, I've got a plan in my head. No, it needs to be written down. It needs to be made clear. That is a non-negotiable habit. Again, why is this non-negotiable? Because this is what we should be helping others with in our coaching. They need to write it down, but I can't say write it down if I'm not writing it down. Number three, share your goals with a coach. Every coach needs a coach. And so again, who is coaching me? Who is helping me make progress? Okay. I have a friend, and we are both performance coaches in kind of different areas. But every other week now that we're meeting, and we kind of role reverse on this. And I have another coach that I have different, have sessions in kind of bursts and banks of sessions. Again, completely different role to my friend. And then there's another, probably more of a mentor that I go to, who helps me particularly with innovative thinking and creative thinking. But we all need coaches. So again, that's a non-negotiable habit, because I have to be intentional to share my goals with a coach and with other people. Number four, as a coach, I need to be resourcing and actioning my plan. So I need to be working what I have into what I can see, resourcing and actioning my plan. Again, it's only as we experience this as a coach that we have the conviction to encourage and challenge other people to do the same. The level of conviction we get from a good idea is not the level of conviction that we get from something that we've experienced. When you've experienced, you don't just communicate it with words, you communicate it from your spirit. And ultimately, when we communicate, it's not just this that's happening, it's this. In fact, what's happening at a subconscious level, at a spirit level, is far more influential, okay? And number five, coach others and teach. Well, of course, if you're a coach, that's what you're doing. But again, I encourage you, don't just do it in the setting that is an obvious coaching environment. If you're a parent, Use your conversations with your children as a coaching opportunity. Coaching doesn't have to be just organized. It can be organic. So look for organic coaching opportunities. We know that coaching is as simple as, where are you now? Where do you want to get to? And how can you get there? Do you know what? We should never be stuck for questions in a conversation as a coach. In fact, we need to practice coaching questions in organic situations more than in organized, because it needs to be a lifestyle before it becomes something we do for a living. Number 6, and finally, we need to celebrate a rhythm of small wins more often. There's nothing worse than a discouraged coach. Ultimately, as coaches, we are to bring courage to people, but you can only give out of what you already have. How do we get encouraged? We need to celebrate the small wins often. And you know what? That happens in community. So what community do you have that is going to celebrate with you? That's one of the reasons why, in fact, all of these gears are the very reason for High Performance Disciple community. So on that note, I really want to encourage you. Listen, I want to encourage you to get into the High Performance Disciple membership program. $24.95 a month, or if you go for the $225 for the annual, which is, I think, 25% off. Listen, this is a first step to immersing yourself in principles that I know have a transformative effect. Some of us may not fully understand how transformative it's going to be, but one thing I'll know is you'll never know until you do it. Okay? So join the community. Get into this transformative environment. In the coming months, we're going to be talking about how in this environment we can train you to coach in a way that can impact and influence your pathway to become a coaching leader, to become somebody who could actually take these principles and use them in the environment where you're trying to bring impact and increase. So listen, I want to encourage you, take advantage of becoming part of this community. Listen, whether you do that or not will not stop me trying to help you, okay? I want to out-help anybody because that's what I'm called to do. But you know what? I'd love to do it with a team of people that say, hey, do you know what? We sense that God is up to something here. We sense that this is something I want to be a part of. Even if you're not a Christian right now, you may say, do you know what? Actually, I'm not subscribed to the God thing yet, but there's definitely stuff that you're talking about here that I know people need. They need these keys. They need this code of success. Hey, listen, why don't you jump on the journey with us? We'd love for you to be included. So, hey, listen, we're going to stop there. I really hope that our time together has been worth your time. And I want to serve you well. So please, why don't you drop me an email? Let me know how this has helped. Let me know questions that you might have. And I'd love to keep our conversation going. If you are part of the High Performance Disciple membership, again, the link is below if you want to join in the section on this YouTube channel, then you can interact with me through the platform by dropping comments as you're going through some of the products and the courses. And again, that's another way for us to interact about some of the specifics around the content that you're consuming. Okay? So listen, whatever I can do to help, that's what I'm here for. Remember, today and every day, you are a champion and there is more in you than you think. Good night and God bless.